This is Hannibal from the HannibalTV.com with a daily wrestling news update for you. I already reported earlier today that Sunny, WWE Hall of Famer, has been arrested. Once again, she has 3 charges against her. Apparently, she has to face a judge, and we'll find out at that time if there's going to be a bond or not. But right now, she is in jail, I guess, unfortunately for her. Kevin Owens is apparently responsible for the fines if you don't wear a mask now in WWE. According to the Wrestling Observer Radio, Owens appeared on a French podcast over the weekend, and I guess he felt not enough people were wearing masks for his liking in WWE. And I guess he has enough pull for Vince McMahon to, I guess you can Vince McMahon, sorry, complicated for me to say tonight, to institute a policy where people can now be fined for not wearing masks on WWE taping days. And that shows you how much pull Owens has now in WWE. Great politician. That's probably his best attribute, backstabbing and behind-the-scenes politics. AJ Styles is apparently claiming that former WWE Raw head writer Paul Heyman is responsible for Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson's April release from the WWE. According to reports, they were making $750,000 a year prior to their release. Pretty huge contracts. It's amazing how much WWE wrestlers get paid these days for the amount that they have to work. But I like Gallows. He's a good guy, but it's probably the money sucks that he's losing the money. But if he goes back to New Japan, he might be used in a way other than just a henchman with New Japan, because really they didn't do much with him ever in WWE. Not much memorable. I think his most memorable character, to me anyways, was the Festus character. And I believe he played the fake Kane for a while too. Dave Meltzer has created some backlash from Jim Cornette. I definitely don't agree with everything Meltzer says, because he does have access to some news that no one else has access to through his years of reporting. However, I definitely don't agree with all of his opinions, as I'm sure I agree with some of his opinions, but not all of them. And one opinion I don't agree with is, I guess he recently stated, except for All Japan Pro Wrestling in the 80s, no company in the history of wrestling has apparently ever had as good of a tag team division as AEW, in Meltzer's opinion. Now, we know he's very, very good friends with the executives at AEW, and the whole Wrestling Observer is extremely biased towards the AEW product, but I find it very, very hard to believe that AEW has the best tag team division in wrestling ever, other than All Japan Pro Wrestling in the 1980s. There's been WWE, when they had the Hart Foundation, Demolition, Powers of Pain, the Rockers, the Rougeau Brothers, the Killer Bees, the British Bulldogs. That was, and I'm missing out on some. The Bushwhackers are in there. I mean, they were at least a comedy tag team. They were in there at the same time. Those were great tag teams that everyone remembers. I couldn't even tell you any of the AEW tag teams other than the Young Bucks, who I only know because they're executives in the company, but I've seen their matches and they don't appeal to me because they're too choreographed looking. As far as some people gave me some heat today because I posted in my YouTube stories a picture of the AEW Snowflake title belt, that comedian Jimmy Mack designed and posted today. I did not create that Snowflake title belt that AEW should have, maybe, with the way that they present things. One quote from AEW management that I found very funny, that I put up with the picture in my YouTube stories of the All Elite Wrestling Snowflake title belt, is this is a real quote from AEW management. They said, "All Elite Wrestling insists in doing our part to create a world of understanding and respect for humankind." Now, there's a quote that will really get you interested in that wrestling company. Wrestling is not about conflict, aggression, confrontation anymore. It's about creating a world of respect and understanding for humankind. It's very politically correct. It's very boring. There's no longer the characters of the past. And if you like it, good for you. I'm reporting on it and keeping my YouTube channel running. The last thing I'll talk about before I look at some of your questions is Big Bill Anderson, who I did an interview with recently, sent me a copy of his book. I put the link in the description. It's available at, I think it's called bigbillanderson.us, but the actual link where you can buy this book is in the description. But this is a book, a picture book, about his dead wrestlers, friends that have passed away. And anyone that wants Billy Graham's autograph, superstar Billy Graham himself has signed a number of copies of these books that Bill Anderson has. They're not very expensive. bigbillanderson.us. The link is in the description. Anyone that wants superstar Billy Graham's autograph, the price of this book to get this book plus Billy Graham's autograph is well worth it. And I highly suggest everyone check out my 3-hour interview with Bill Anderson. I'll definitely have to do a follow-up. If you don't know who he was a WWE wrestler. He was in the UWF as the Black Knight. He was in the AWF that Tito Santana ran. He was a WWF ring announcer, WWF referee. He was one of the guys that was always around. He has a lot of great stories. Worked with Roddy Piper, worked with Jesse Ventura. Great guy, good friend of Billy Graham's. And anyone that's a close friend of Billy Graham's, I consider a friend of mine. WK says, Sonny needs help. So sad. Edgar Barranco, my thoughts on Nakamura. I've said it before. I've never really been a fan of the Japanese wrestlers. They just don't do it for me. Maybe it's a communication thing. Maybe it's a culture thing. But I guess I don't even think Yokozuna was Japanese. I think he was Samoan. But I guess, or the Great Muta. I was also a fan of the Great Muta. But other than those two, which, as I said, I don't think Yokozuna counts, I'm not really a fan of Japanese wrestlers, but I do like the strong style, Japanese wrestling style. That's what I always tried to do in my career. It's just too bad they were all chicken to fight me and they never brought me over there because they knew I would have made them look bad. But I don't blame them. If I ran a company and I knew someone could come in that could beat the hell out of my whole roster and was from a different company, I probably wouldn't use me either. But as I've said before, both my grandparents fought in World War II where we kicked the Japanese ass. So I have a whole history of beating up Japanese. So I think that all plays into why the Japanese wrestlers are afraid of me. Edgar Barranco says, oh man, Luke and Bush. Butch, they were over. And Luke, Bushwhacker Luke, who there's a shoot interview with on this channel, he has a great mind for the business too. He came up with my wrestling name, Hannibal. He's the one that gave me that name. And he booked for a lot of companies, very underrated. Jamie Newman says AEW is a joke. Big Dummy says AEW should have a humanitarian championship. Yes, they should, I guess, if that's what they're going for. As I said, it's not my taste at all. When they first came back, they said they were going to be sports orientated and going back to the old school classic style of wrestling. When they said that, I was actually excited for it. And if you watch my videos from around that time, I was actually very hopeful that they would do well. It was only when they constantly have gone in the other direction to the point where I don't really like WWE's product now either, but between WWE and AEW, I'd rather watch none, but I would take WWE over the two from the Twitter clips and the YouTube clips that I've seen. But that's just the wrestling landscape. As I said in my update earlier today, I talked to Kevin Sullivan on the phone earlier. He agrees with me about Nick Aldis, that guy's had his chance of running with the NWA title. Their whole channel is only getting 200,000 views a month with all the money they've put into the NWA, where my channel is getting millions and millions and millions and millions of views a month, self-funded by me and the kind tips that you guys provide and the great people that help support me at patreon.com. That's a drop in the bucket. That's a needle in the haystack compared to the funding that the NWA has, and it's gone nowhere. John Wolf says, bring back Bill Watts. Yes. You know, I would love to see Bill Watts booked today, but there's not many of today's performers that would be able to handle it under Bill Watts. NeoGX01 says he found an episode of ECW on YouTube, and it was better than anything that's out there today. Will Cortez says Cornette is pro-abortion, and while you're going into political stuff, I really don't follow it. I'm not political. Some people, there's so many haters that go against me, and some people accuse me of being political to both parties in the U.S., even though I know nothing about U.S. politics. The one thing I know about U.S. politics is a WWE Hall of Famer is the president. That's literally all I know, and I don't follow Canadian politics. The only thing I know about Canadian politics is I don't like the person that runs my province right now at all, or the Prime Minister of Canada, and I will vote against both of them when the election time comes because I don't like how they've handled the lockdown situation. Wario Walugi says, would I do an interview with Matt or Jeff Hardy? You just reminded me too, Jeff Hardy's contract is up, I believe, at the end of this month. So you might see him switch into AEW. Yes, I would, but I don't see it happening. But I would. Johnny Fox, yeah, I get multi-millions of views a month. I'm not exaggerating that. I'm doing great. For the people that like to insult me and say I'm bitter because I'm not a wrestler, I'm still a booker in Great North Wrestling. I run my own company, and I'm doing better on YouTube as a commentator about wrestling and an interviewer than I ever was as a wrestler, and I don't have to take any bumps. So I'm actually quite happy with this. Plus, I get to dive into other domains like celebrity interviews and UFO interviews, which I'm going to have another one of those this week with the lady that runs Project Camelot. And as I said, I don't necessarily agree with everything these UFO interview people say, but I do like to jump out of the wrestling domain here or there. Debo says in Michigan, gyms are still closed, but strip clubs are open. While in Ontario here, gyms are still closed. They're supposed to open up next week. They announced today. For me, after I'm done this, I'm driving 45 minutes to my gym in Quebec, which I actually like. I actually don't mind driving there that much because for the last 3 weeks since the gyms in Quebec opened up, I've been a lot happier. I get very depressed when I'm not able to lift weights. I lost almost 20 pounds being off during this lockdown because I need heavy weight to keep my muscle mass. But I've already gained a lot of it back, and I'm happy. It's almost euphoric being back in the gym. But I believe I actually lost more size from the lockdown, from not being in the gym, than I would have if I'd actually caught the COVID. I was able to see my grandmother today, though. I was happy about that with the mask on, granted. Warrior, someone is asking me, sorry, I can't pronounce your name. If I did get into WWE when I was offered the contract by them, what year would it have been? It was 2009. I had my contract offer in June 2009, so I could have potentially been there 11 years. I was actually signed, for example, before Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn were, and they had already been wrestling about 5 years before me. But whatever, the way that fate worked out, they went that direction. I think fate had another plan for me, and I'm still fairly young. I have a lot of accomplishments to accomplish in my lifetime, a lot of things on the go. Denny Vaughn says he likes my Misfits shirt. Wario says I can call him Wario. Homebrew Gaming says Misfits. So at that note, thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. For my buddies here that aren't watching Raw, I'm going to finish my protein shake here, which, by the way, if you go into the description, I am part of a supplement company now, and you can get a 20% discount if you follow the link in the description or at the HannibalTV.com. Red One, the same company that Braun Strowman is part of. I haven't received any supplements from them yet, but I will let you know how they go as I take them. But this is my pre-workout, so have a good night.